library, and Weathering the Storm, Big Storm Stories from Norwood and Beyond. This program is sponsored by the Mass Cultural Council, the state agency, through its FY 2014 Festivals and Projects Grant Program. Mass Cultural Council funds reach every community in the Commonwealth. Its mission is to promote excellence, education, access, and diversity in the arts, humanities, and science, to improve the quality of life for all Massachusetts residents and contribute to the vitality of our communities and economy. We are doing this program in partnership with the town of Norwood as part of our Norwood Sustainability Series, and Holly Jones will be moderating for us. Before I sit down, I would like to say that the library is planning to start a digital history archive online, and one topic we'd like to cover is weather events in the town. So if you'd be interested in having us contact you in the future to share your story, including any photographs or anything you might have, I'm going to leave this over by the refreshments with a pen, and feel free to sign up if you're interested. Now, Holly, I'll let you take over.
All right. Hi, everyone. Most of you know me, but I'm Holly Jones. I'm the Assistant Director of Community Development over in Town Hall, and I'm very grateful to everyone who came out tonight, along with the Massachusetts Cultural Council and the library, for getting us some tea, my favorite. So tonight, I'm really looking forward to, because it's going to be a little bit different than the normal sort of meeting or lecture or Q&A that we town staff often end up doing, where we all get to sort of connect as neighbors, friends, and to me that is one of the most important parts of preparing for emergencies, is getting to know your town, getting to know your neighbors, and being ready to lend a hand in those relationships. So I think Norwood does a great job of that, and I am happy to be here now with all of you to share some of those stories. So we had, about 8 people sign up to share a story, and I think the way that I want to do it, I don't have like a set list in mind or anything, but I was thinking maybe we could alternate between, because we have a number of town staff here who have worked through major storm events and are able to talk about that. And we have a number of residents as well, and I was thinking maybe we could switch between like a staff person, a resident, and back and forth until we run out of one or the other. I also have a few stories that were emailed to me from folks who weren't able to be here, and I have asked Jean and Chris to read for me some of those. So
I just like reading out loud.
Yeah, and I suspect you're good at it. I also wanted to give a shout out. There's a pretty glaring omission, and that nobody from the fire department was able to be here with us tonight. So we have a lot of amazing town staff here, and I want to give a shout out to the fire department. They're here in our hearts. And I was actually able to talk to Deputy Chief John Cody and the Fire Prevention Captain Jeff Campilio earlier today, and asked them if there was anything they wanted me to sort of highlight on their behalf. And Deputy Chief Cody said he really wanted to just tell everyone, thinking about the June 28th, 2020 flood that the town experienced, just what an amazing job the crew did on that night, and how much they did. He said a lot of people didn't realize, in addition to evacuating the hospital, there were multiple fires that night. There were multiple calls for stranded vehicles. He actually left a home that was on fire to go help oversee the evacuation of the hospital. And with the support of a lot of our mutual aid and neighboring towns and state support, they were able to evacuate 120 people from the hospital by flashlight, including 9 people in the ICU who were brought down on beds, and they did it with no injuries. While the fire department isn't here with us, I know that we wouldn't be here without them. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. Feel free to wander over and grab snacks while we're gathered. I think the highlight of one of the stories that I'm looking forward to the most tonight is hearing from Frank Civitone, who I have pictures from. I'm going to put them up here. And I will let Mark Ryan introduce Frank to get us started.
Thank you, Holly. Thanks for putting this together, and welcome everyone. I'm Mark Ryan, Director of Public Works and Town Engineer. I've been the director since 2009. So, personally, I've been part of many storm events, mainly the winter events that we have to deal with, and we're very fortunate these days that with the weather forecasting and the equipment that we have, and just the way things work now, we can handle pretty much anything these days. Knock on wood, but we've been very fortunate. We've had some really large events, and we do pretty good. It's because everything's been improved over the years. But when I thought about what event could really interest people, I mean, other than the June of 2020 rainfall event, or the June of 1998 rainfall event, nothing beats the blizzard of '78 in most of our minds. And I was a high school senior at Norwood High, and I can remember being discharged, or dismissed rather, early, because all of a sudden this weather event just kind of snuck up on everyone. And then for the next week or so, we had no school, and it was pretty amazing time. But during that, 1 to 2 weeks after the blizzard of '78, there was a lot going on around town. Getting the town back together, getting the state back together. In fact, John Carroll, former town manager, was the director for the Mass Highway Department, and he was in charge of all the highways throughout the Commonwealth of Mass. And he used to tell me stories. He used to kiddingly say, I'm the reason 128 got blocked up, and it's all on me. But he was just saying that in jest, but he came up with ideas, and I can remember him telling me, they're on 128, what do we do? And there's National Guard generals there saluting John Carroll, and he's looking at him like, what's going on here?
My vice principal was the head of the National Guard.
Yeah, so it was a wild time, but we have in the town of Norwood the ultimate, I call him snow fighter, in Frank Civitone. Frank is a graduate of Norwood High in 1973, has accomplished many things, wrestling, his own business in contracting, but I really think his passion is snow fighting, and he's helped us a lot at DPW with ways to approach an event. But Frank was working for the Norwood Public Works Department in 1978, and he has amazing recollection of what went on. Those photos are all part of a, this is amazing, all right? Frank has a book, The blizzard of '78, and there's an update now, the year of the blizzard, 1978, that's available on Amazon, and the proceeds, part of the proceeds go to the Norwood Food
Food
Pantry.
pantry, yes.
Excellent.
All right, and it's really incredible what he kept. He keeps very good notes, and he has a great memory, and it's just amazing listening to him. And I said, Holly, I got the perfect person to talk about some of the things that went on during that, things that, you know, we just can't imagine what they went through. So without further ado, Holly, I'd like to introduce the ultimate snow fighter, Frank Ciratone.
Thank you, Mark.
Bravo.
Thank you very much for inviting me, Polly, and everyone here. It's an honor to be here. Mark's right, it is a passion, but I just want to say one thing before I talk about it. If there was a blizzard today, like in '78, with the equipment Mark's got and his know-how, and I'm not saying this to be funny, Mark and I talk a lot during storms and like about different things, and it would not be the same. Because first of all, the equipment they got is phenomenal, and in the blizzard, the machine I drove, there's a picture right there.
Mm-hmm.
So no, it had just a cab and no curtains, no heat. I had frostbite in my hands and my ears.
Oh, yeah.
And but it started, like you said, Mark, around 10 o'clock in the morning, and by 11 o'clock it was like a total whiteout. They called all the people in the yard. They weren't really ready for a big storm because they had to put the tire chains on the trucks. They used to do that back then. And then we end up going out, and I was in a truck plowing down off of Pleasant Street, and we got stuck, and we had to get help by another town loader. The mechanic drove that down and helped us get out. But when I said, don't come down Pleasant Street side, come down Pleasant Street side, don't come down Lenox Street. And he did, and he went over a Volkswagen. So he got stuck. So they had to get another contractor with a bigger loader, and he come out and got us out. I ended up going back to the town yard. They finally got this loader back, and everyone went home, the older guys and stuff, and I ended up in that for almost 300 straight hours. And I did, I was part of moving all the snow in Norwood Center, South Norwood, many side streets I did. And it was kind of I remember leaving the yard the night that they said, Frank, you're going to go up to Winslow Ave. There's 3 cruisers stuck. And right near Batuka's gas station is there. And I went there, and they were snowed in, so I cleaned the snow around them. They had me I got a bucket of snow, they said to push the car into the gas station, so that I did. And I don't think I did any damage, but, you know, they had to go because they had chains in their car, and they had to go to another emergency. So that was a highlight. But I remember coming up to Norwood Center from the town yard, looking at the town hall, how tranquil it was. And then looking down Washington Street towards, heading towards South Norwood, and it was so tranquil and snow, you couldn't even hardly see. It was incredible. But a couple highlights, I went down to help take the 2 white ladies that died down at, used to be called Sparks. And they got asphyxiated from the park there. The police went down several times to get them out, but they refused to leave. And then I helped them get them out, and I was just like I had a big punch list to go from one to the other. And my mother made me a blanket to go over me and then over my shoulders because I was getting snowed in. And I remember leaving my mother's house, and I found a woman in the corner of Dean Street and Washington Street, and she was blue. And I took her out of the snowbank and I put her in the front bucket. And as I put it down, I put the quilts over and went under her head. And I called the town yard to say I was heading to the hospital, to bring her there. And they said, no problem. But when I got up to Hoyle Street, the fire department met me there, because that was as far as they could get. You know, they couldn't get to where I was. And then they took over from there. And then I remember the night, it was Saturday night, and I was informed that to go to where Conrad's is now, to park there and wait there, and when there was some equipment coming to help, they wanted me to meet him and escort him where to start doing uptown. When I got up there, I'm looking up the road, right where the library is here right now, and there was these big monster headlights. They had 3 big 7-8 yard front end loaders with the tires like 6-7 feet tall, and 5 big huge rock trucks, 50-ton rock trucks. And back then, that was they were monsters. They are today too. But the town had the loader I was in a case loader, which was only a 2-yard bucket, and that broke down. Now, what do you use? You have 3 big loaders now. They got 3 to 4 yard loaders, which back then that would have been like a dream. So they came and then we worked all night. It took 3 times to clean Howard Center. We used the big loaders all night. The next day, the town had a snow blower. The crew came in that ran it, and it wasn't a big one, but it was enough to clean up the scraps from the big loaders. And when they did that, then my loader and I got a couple of big dump trucks, and I cleaned all around the lights and all that. So it took 3 actual cleanups to do that. And then we had South Norwood. But one thing that was funny is they sent them to do around Shattuck Park. I don't know if you know where that is. It's like off of Chapel Street there. And there's a chapel.
Winter.
Off
Winter, Nichols,
Shattuck
and
Park.
Shattuck Park Road.
No, not Shattuck, I'm sorry, Mark.
TAV?
Chapel Street
That's
Park.
a disabled thing.
Well, they sent the big loaders up there to clean around it, because they couldn't see the granite post that had the 2-inch pipe in it. They took down like 75% of them. They popped them like they were popsicle sticks. Like a town loader would have bounced off it and broke something. These things just went boom right over it. And they're driving around in the snow like it was like you drive around with a car in like 3 inches of snow. It was incredible. But I remember they had to order all the granite, and then they had to get the pipe and put that together. But I think I cleaned the total of about 25 streets myself, and I slept here and there on the steering wheel just to get a quick cat nap, and then I ended up going on. My mother and father lived on Allendale Parkway. That's where I was living, and I would go home quick, take a shower, and right back out the door. And I did that for almost, like I said, till I think the 20th of February, and the blizzard was the 6th. And then the kids, because I finished up the day before the kids went to school. That was, we still did snow, but not, I wasn't around the clock till then, just until that time. But the pictures there show there's a big bulldozer on the corner of Day Street on the right. He was responsible for hitting a hydrant up on Florence Ave, which I had to fix by myself. Mark knows that story. It was unbelievable. And then the one below is the railroad bridge on Manhattan Street. And the other ones are uptown, and the 2 in the middle are show Route 1 snowed in, and then Route 1 opened up. They used big, to do Route 1, they brought in a big earth mover from Simeon gravel pit down in Plainville. Big one. And he opened it up, and then the state had these Oshkosh snow trucks with the big V-plows and the wings, and they push the snow back. And, I've used my Oshkosh when I had them and stuff, with Mark, like on a big storm, push them back, 'cause they work so good. But, it was just, something that I'll never forget, you know. Anyone have any questions or
That's
anything?
awesome.
Along that storm, I was not working there then. I was in elementary school, but I was talking to some of the retirees. They always told the stories. And I was talking to one of them today because he got stuck down the substation working down there for 3 straight days.
Wow.
Because we couldn't get anybody, they couldn't get anyone to
Right.
change shifts
Right,
because they had no way to get down there.
right,
And the former superintendent, Jimmy Collins, told the story. He lived over near Elda. So what he had to do is just take his cross-country skis to get into work. That was the only way he could get there. But they also use it as a learning tool, because what had happened is a lot of the linemen were told, just go home, we'll call you back. Once you're calling them back, they couldn't get there, because nobody could come
I
back.
opened up the road for you, if you
So-
have a station, so,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah. Chris says, I probably would have wished you did it a couple days earlier, but. Yeah. So they couldn't come back, so a lot of the linemen that lived in town that they could get to, they brought in, but anybody that was in some of the other surrounding towns couldn't get back. So we're much more cautious now. We see a big snowstorm coming or anything like that, bring them in before it even starts. It's safer that way anyway. You don't want them traveling in the middle of the storm.
Yeah.
My hometown is Abington, and my father was a policeman. We didn't see him for 2 or 3 days. But I was teaching at Silver Lake Regional Junior High, and the superintendent wouldn't let us go. We had split sessions. I lucked out, and that the art teacher's wife called in a panic, and I was his ride that day. He had one arm out the window, and I had the other. And the windshield wipers wouldn't work, and then I dropped him off and still had another 10 miles to go. And that was scary. And I'm sitting by the phone that morning, and my father says, there's not gonna be any school. I said, you don't know Superintendent Squasher. If he can have school, he told the maintenance man, I expect that parking lot to be cleaned by tomorrow. The man was, and Dave Gavigan, he was the head of the National Guard. We didn't see him until, I think it was June, when he was done. But Abington, their plows, they
Right.
kept them going 24 hours. We were down to bare pavement. We were the only town around that, because they did that, and then they went and did the ends of everybody's driveway.
Well, you know,
It was unbelievable. We couldn't relate to other towns
Right.
that, like this, because they, as far as that goes.
This town had the most snow from here to Franklin.
I believe it.
It was 36.1 inches in Norwood, but when I went up the cemetery, and there was 5 or 6 hearses behind me. I had to open the road to the chapel. And when I got out of the loader, I had the tape measure. I had a wooden stick, and it went beyond my wooden stick. And I was figuring it was probably 42 inches up in the cemetery, because it's high up.
Higher elevation.
Yeah.
But if this town, another thing this town has, that no other town around has in this area, is Mark had the hindsight to get a snowblower, a big truck one. I mean, it's massive. And we just don't use the low trucks. We go around and clean streets after the storm, right, Mac? Like any street that's got a problem, I run it, and we go down the street and we widen the street out like it was like a runway. But it was a time people don't realize it was a good move.
Now, that picture you have there over the Day Street with was that what you were driving?
No, that came from the landfill. That was at that time the landfill rented hired out bulldozers to clean the dump, and they brought that out of the airport. But when he came out, he came down Winter Street, and then he took a left on Prospect Street. Then he went to push the snow against the corner of Florence Avenue. He broke a hydrant.
Oh,
Years ago, the public works director would like to go to the town meeting saying he saved money for the town. And how he did it was he didn't put valves and stuff on a lot of hydrants. You run into that, right? And so I had to shut down about, I don't know how many valves to put the hydrant in. And we put a new valve in too. But we only had 3 hydrants at night. One on Winter Street, which was a big uke backed over it. But he didn't break. He didn't make it like water come out. And then on East Cross Street, which is down near Froggy's, is that it? The big payloader hit that hydrant. I was able to shut that one down. But Town of Walpole had 26 hydrants hit.
Whoa.
With those big, they used those big quarry loaders. That's where they came from. But they had 26 hit.
So now, was your plow bigger or smaller than the bulldozer?
What's that?
The plow that you were driving, bigger or smaller?
Smaller.
Smaller,
Yeah. Yeah.
Just 'cause I know we
It-
have,
It was big, but it didn't articulate in the middle like you see today. It was straight frame. It steered in the back. Had no heat, you know. But I was only 22.
geez.
They all said, "When do you want to go home, Frank?" I said, "June."
Hope you got a lot of overtime for that.
Yeah. I got a yellow envelope with all the checks in it. It's like a middle envelope.
Oh, wow.
But, and Mark's, ever since then, Mark and I, anytime there's snow, we always have well, he has the plan, but whatever he needs done, I help him get through everything.
Now, are those snow blowers I see, or snowmobiles I see?
No, there's no, the snow blowers the town had, they were, the fellow that ran it, he went home, he went home that Monday. He didn't come back in until Saturday. Yeah, the whole DPW didn't. I was the only one on for, until the weekend. That's when the sun came out. Yeah.
Let the young guy do it.
Yeah, that's what I did. But I had, my hands were all icy and my head and my back and I ate. Mark will tell you, I put cans of ravioli on the manifold. And if I wanted baked potato, I put the butter in the potato and I wrapped the tin foil and I put it in the manifold. And then I would ride around about a half hour, I'd get it out, I'd eat it.
This is amazing. I think we're gonna have to hit you up with more questions after we've
No
heard from a few more people, Frank.
No problem.
Just,
Oh.
yes, but I just want to recognize Frank. Look him up. Strongest Man competitions hold many records, Frank Civittone. But the most important thing, this Saturday, he's being inducted in the Massachusetts, the National
Yeah.
Wrestling Hall of Fame.
Wow.
Nice.
And they're going to be honored at Gillette Stadium, so.
Thank you very much.
Wow.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Strongman
Here he is.
competition.
That's a Hall of Fame man right there.
Wow.
Let's see. Where did my photo go? So now I'm kind of thinking
Yeah.
maybe we can just go around the circle. I know you had signed up Marguerite with a story.
Who, me?
You.
Okay. Relative to the blizzard of '78, February 6th was a work day. And it was snowing lightly, but, I'm a New Englander, it snows, we deal with it. It was a blizzard the day I was born. And people say I've been giving people a snow job ever since, but that's another issue. Took me an hour to drive to my job at the Foxborough Company. It took me 2 hours to drive home.
Yep.
After I got there, I had barely gotten to my office when they said, "Go home, everybody go home." I said, "Thanks." So, got home, and it's snowing pretty hard by that time. It's about 10 o'clock, as
Yep.
we were saying. And I stayed in for the rest of the day, but I had to open the door, the front door every so often to make sure I could still get out.
Yeah.
And at one point, I wound up taking the glass storm panel out of the door because I couldn't just shove the door open anymore. I had to take the door panel out and knock the snow away from it with the shovel. Kept up for quite a long time. And when the sun finally came out, when it finally stopped snowing, never mind when the sun came out, I took my trusty shovel, dug my way to the garage and took out the snowblower. The snowblower couldn't handle it. It was like a 24-inch snowblower. It couldn't throw the snow far enough to clear the snowbanks. We had two full-size Buick LeSabres in the driveway. You would not have known they were there. So I started shoveling, and I've kept shoveling for 3 days before I could finally get a path to the street. Big kudos to DPW for plowing the street, because when I finally got there, it was pretty clear. And also to the Norwood Electric Department, because they kept the power on through the entire storm. This was huge. So I finally got dug out and decided to go walk downtown, see what was happening. I met my neighbors. We all, checked each other and made sure we were okay. Got down to what was, at that time, I believe, the First National store at on Washington Street. I saw lots of people going into the First National store, and I said, "What are you getting?" "Oh, we got to get bread and milk." I said, "Wait a minute, you don't drink milk." They said, No, that doesn't matter. We got to get bread and milk." Okay. So I kept going. I walked downtown. It's about 2 miles from my house to the center of Norwood. And I noticed over the drift, you could see the marquee of what was then the Norwood Theater. The movie that was playing was the one with John Denver and George Burns.
Oh, God.
Oh, God.
I hope you got a picture of that.
I did. And then I walked home, and the sun was starting to set. And it was very pretty, because all of the snow was nice and white and reflecting all of the light. And the electric wires on the poles were gold. It was really quite impressive. And with what happened today in Maine, where everybody was trying to console each other and check on each other, what happened during that time in Norwood was similar, because people were checking on each other, making sure everybody was okay, that they were dug out. And I think that's the spirit we've seen in other emergencies in town. It makes me very proud to live here. That's my story.
Nice.
As a Rhode Islander, my favorite photo of the blizzard of '78 is 95 at the border of Massachusetts and Rhode Island. It's the most iconic photo from the Rhode Island perspective of blizzard of '78, because there's 4 feet of snow on the Rhode Island side. On the Massachusetts side, there is not a flake on it. Right up to the plow, right up to the border, and said, deal with it.
It was that way all the way to the other end of the border.
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Eva, I have 2 videos and a photo. Which one would you like first?
Why don't you just show the videos and we'll forget the photo.
Okay.
All right, that gives you an idea of the massive amount that was in my basement.
Oh, my goodness.
That's my neighbor helping me out. I'd like to bring it more recently to the flash flood of June 28, 2020. This is my first floor. God bless my neighbor. I'll just read what I have here. I've been in Norwood since 1994, and yes, we've had rainstorms. However, on June 28, 2020, we had extremely heavy rainfall in a short period of time. My garage and basement level were flooded, as you can see. Items stored in those areas had to be thrown, walls were cut and repaired, dehumidifiers were on day and night. I could not handle this dire situation, but my neighbor came to my aid and pushed the water out into the driveway drain. It seems the water came gushing down from Wedgewood Drive and affected the houses on my side of the street. My hope is that this never happens again, and whatever the town can do in regards to prevention is good with me. So there you have it. Kind of gives you an idea of the massive amount of water that was throughout my lower level. Water gushing down Wedgewood Drive. You did what you could. Now I don't know if that's the answer, but so far that's what we got, right? Right.
So what street do you live on?
Robinwood
Oh,
Road.
you're on Rockwood, yeah, yeah, so
We
we
had
have
a
that.
meeting a few times down there.
Right, so we have that in our master plan to replace that drain on Robinwood,
Really?
yeah.
Well, that's good news.
Mhm.
Now, where would the drain be?
In the street,
But I mean, where? Wedgewood, Robinwood,
so,
catch the water?
so on Robinwood,
Oh,
so
on
it's a 10-inch
Robinwood.
pipe there in Robinwood, which is,
Okay,
The
so
flat.
that's in the future then.
yeah, that is,
That would be a big part of prevention.
absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eva. Do you want to show the other video, or
What, honey?
do you want to show the other video, or?
I think that gave an idea.
Yeah.
That's good enough.
Okay.
You got the idea. May I be excused?
Take a donut.
Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you.
I'm not the
for
only
joining
one.
us.
We were all affected on that side of the street. It was bad. You know that. We've had meetings there.
Yeah, the whole
Yeah.
town, I mean, 5 inches in 90 minutes.
Well, if the Norwood Hospital can go down, I could go down.
Right.
Thank you so much. Is this an exit?
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Dan, I think you're up.
All right. Obviously, been there a long time, been through a lot of the storms. I think one of the more memorable ones for us was the April Fool's snowstorm.
Yeah.
That caught, didn't catch people off guard. I think the magnitude did. And from the electric light department standpoint, that's a time where leaves are already getting back on the trees. So you get all that snow with the leaves, it just brings everything crashing down, the limbs, getting around to take care of the outages that occurred. We rely on Public Works, obviously, to get us around town. We can't get to the outages if we can't get down the streets. And bucket trucks are not four-wheel drive. They have a lot of weight to them, but they're not four-wheel drive. So we work with all the departments during any of those storms. But that storm in particular, we did have several outages. I think we were there for 2 to 3 days. Most of the electrical outages, so to speak, we were able to handle within 4 or 5 hours. Individual houses where trees, limbs came down, we would have to go. One of the things we always try to do is make sure at the end of the day when we leave a storm, every person has power. We'll try and get any way we can, as long as it's safe. If it's something gets torn out of the house, like the main, then we can't do something there. But our electricians, they come up with some pretty good ideas, and they'll get somebody some temporary power, and then we'll work with the town, with the wiring inspector to make sure everything gets done safely. But that 97 storm, after we did get all the power back, then it was just a matter of, we get called for every wire, telephone, cable, and obviously those were hanging low. We don't like to cut them. We rely on the police department to tell us if they say it's a public safety issue, then we can cut telephone and cable, but we really can't. We're not supposed to cut them unless it's a safety emergency. So we had to do a ton of those during the storm so the plows could get up and down the streets. They can't get up and down if the wires are low. And it took about 2 days by the time we cleared everything up, got the fire alarm back together. It was a long storm for everybody. That's pretty much the story. I mean, I wasn't sure, I know you had maybe talked to Kevin about it, and I know Kevin wanted to be here, but he couldn't, so.
Everyone's recovering from COVID and not giving us all COVID, so.
Not sharing.
Thank you, Kevin.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming, Dan. Chief Bruce,
You have those
do you want me to-
photos by chance?
Yeah.
Just to give you an idea. I actually put them in a PowerPoint, but the PowerPoint won't play, so we have individual photos. And actually, the first photo that you won't see is a policeman and a fireman who were in the newspaper for saving a dog from drowning on Dunn's Pond, because the location of the police station used to be Dunn's Pond. We probably should have known at that point. Maybe not a good place for a police station. So this picture is, as best I can figure, is probably late 1990s. That's Bernie Cooper in the rowboat in the back. To the right is Don Frucci, and rowing the boat is Billy Casey. They were detectives at the Norwood Police Department. The officer kind of standing in the white shirt is Joe Tessassini, also a Norwood policeman. And try as we might, we've never been able to identify the cigarette smoking in the back. But a couple of things about that photo is, note that the door is open, so that depth of water is inside the building as well. And those roll-up doors that are on the left. Now, obviously, that's not today's police station. The way that station sat on that lot was it was a hill. So the front of the police station was one story, the back of the police station was two. And when it was built, that sign above Joe Tessini's head says civil defense. And the basement was supposed to have a civil defense application. Within a very short time, the department had outgrown the building. Lockers were put in the hallways, and the detective squad was put in the basement in the civil defense area. So every time you got this kind of a flood, it flooded the detective squad. That's where I ended up from 1986 to 2000. And you can't see in that picture, but there were actually racks in the doorways and these big, heavy wooden barriers with handles on them. And when heavy rain was predicted, you take the barriers and you put them in these slots, and they had rubber on the side, and the idea was to keep the water out. What it did was really slowed the water down. The worst rains were the deluge. It could rain for 40 days and 40 nights and it would never bother you. But if you got a real downpour, that area used to fill up very, very quickly. There were no windows in the detective squad, so dispatch would call down and say, "It's raining." How hard? Let's say wicked hard. So we'd get the barriers and we'd scramble. Anybody who was there would scramble, get the barriers in place to try to keep the rain out. Okay, so go on to the next one. So we thought we were all set with the barriers, and the town also built a retention basin, and Mark could speak more to this on the engineering side. It's kind of hard to see because that picture's so small, the way it's displayed there, but that's standing in the upper portion of the police station parking lot, looking out towards the rear. And you can kind of see the fence that runs along the top of the retention basin, and you can see the two cars on the right. That picture's actually showing is that the retention basin is water that's deep, and it's a little bit less deep in the parking lot. This storm was on June 13th, 1998. When you get 5 feet of water in your office, you remember the date. I had 5 feet of water in my office, as did the entire detective squad. I'll show the next one. So that's again standing in the parking lot. That's the side of the building facing Dunkin' Donuts. You see the upper portion of the building is actually the main floor, and those two buildings that are like water level are the basement. And you can't see it, but there's a line that runs like from the top of that right window down to the car. And that guy, I remember this. In order to try to drag that car out, we called a wrecker, and that gentleman worked for the wrecker company. And he took the line from the wrecker, and when he got to the car, he had to dive down and go and swim under the car to hook it up, so that car could be dragged out. So that's the 1998 June flood. You see the dumpster floating in the back. So none of this was funny, but between the retention basin being there and us being told that, listen, this would handle all future storms, I got a call at home, and they said, you know, it's raining really hard. And I could see that from my house anyway, and they said, look, the retention basin is overflowing, and we're taking on water fast. So I got there, pulled it, went in the main floor, went down the stairwell, got into the basement. It's, you know, maybe 3 or 4 inches deep, and went to our offices, which were more towards the front of the building. So they were completely underground. And we began taking we never kept anything on the floor anyway. In the 14 years I was in detectives, we had 14 floods. This was the 14th flood in 14 years. So we didn't keep anything on the first floor, on the ground anyway, but we began taking out everything out of our bottom drawers and put them on top of the desks. And as it got deeper, we began to empty the second drawer. And one of the officers came and says, "You got to see this." And we walked down the hallway, and there was a door, one of those doors with glass in the upper part and all wooden down below. And you could see the level of water on the other side of the door was about 5 feet. Wow. And the water was spraying through the kind of the sides of the door at the frame. He says, that's unbelievable. And I said, that's the way out. Because the building was on an embankment like that, and the front of it was 1 story in the front and it was 2 stories in the back. So there were no windows in the front. We couldn't see what was going on outside. That's why they used to call us on the phone. So we're standing there in the hallway and we're looking at this door, and this door is between us and the main door that goes out where you saw that rowboat before. And so at that point it's kind of not panic, but forget about getting stuff. Forget about saving files. We'd lost everything by that point. We'd lost all fingerprints, all mug shots. The evidence room had been flooded, and we were now, we were up to our knees, but we could see that we had 5 feet on the other side of that glass, and we had to figure a way to get out. So those 2 windows, the door was, you see where the 2 windows are, the door was between them.
Oh.
So the roll call room was on the real backside. And that window that's right at the edge of the photograph was an administrative office where the officers used to fill details at the time. And don't ask me why, but the guy in his desk drawer had a screwdriver. I don't know why. I had a portable radio with me, and I called and I said, get the fire department over here with some tools. Now, of course, I didn't realize they wouldn't have been able to really get to us unless they kind of went in waist deep. But we took the screwdriver, we took the frame apart of the window, took out the glass, took out the window, disassembled it, and it was myself and Dean Raymond and Kevin McDonough, and then Elaine Kugis and Chief King, who had been chief 6 months. And we got the window apart, and we were just ready to crawl out. It's my favorite part of the story. Chief King looks at me and he says, "Is there a protocol for this?" I said, "Yeah, Elaine goes first and you go last." Women and children first. We got Elaine out through the window. The 3 of us crawled out. We reached in, we grabbed Chief King by his hands, and we got him out, and we waded up, and that was it. We were out of the building. I didn't go back till the next day, and the water subsided, and there was a water line. Everywhere you look, there's a water line, about 5 feet off the ground. Unless you had something hanging on the wall, like a picture, those are the only things that were salvageable. So, no, the next one if you want. So there's another picture, basically, of kind of the same area. Those 2 firefighters in the boat. In the back, you can see the roof lights of a fire car. Yeah. The parked back there. And you see the other 2 little to the left of that? Those are those 2 cars I showed you before. Those were cars that we had seized from drug dealers that we used for surveillance. They were completely submerged. On the right, you can see the top of a Jeep. I can just tell you that car was an evidence car, and that was involved in a serious investigation. And we were holding that car, but it was destroyed by the flood. So next one. So I showed you those roll-up doors. That's what actually happened, is that during the flood, with the force of the water, it finally burst through those roll-up doors, and that's why we had so much water come into the building so quickly. Now you see there's some stuff stacked up in front of it. People bringing in coolers and boxes, and we were trying to get stuff out of there, salvage what we could, but you can see other doors destroyed, and we had maybe a couple more. That's the roll call room. You see the refrigerator on its side? So the water lifted everything, and then when the water subsided, things came to rest, however they happened to be. The refrigerator was never supposed to be on the side, it was standing up when we last saw it. You see that the chairs, how the chairs floated and then landed there. The table, you know, picked up and floated there. And then I think we got maybe two more. That's a cubicle that was used by detectives. You can see the monitors are laying on their backs. This isn't the case where they would have been lifted, but because they were tethered to the computers themselves, they didn't float all over the office. They essentially stayed in place. Then when the water subsided, they landed on their backs like that. And all this other stuff, you see that our office was not a sloppy place, but you see keyboards hanging and stuff. If you looked at that closely, you can see the residue that's all over the screens of the monitors, and you can see the keyboard has filth on it and so forth. I don't know if I've got any more.
I think that's the end.
So, you know, I remember a woman coming in and reporting assault like the next day. And, you know, they called for a detective to go talk to her. And I took my steno pad and my pen, and I went out in the parking lot, and we sat in my cruiser. And I said, I got to apologize, but this is all we have. You know, I can write down what you say, but I've got nothing else. So we took a statement. Within a short time, we were told we were being moved to Pacific. And we moved up to Pacific. And a gentleman who owned the business took some furniture. He bought furniture for his place and gave us his furniture, and we completely furnished the place. And I was on the phone, of course it was chaos, and on the phone trying to run the detective squad, and then there's all this chaos going on about the move. And they came in and they said, hey Sarge, they want to let the door out front. There's 2 glass doors there. And one goes into the current Civic, and then the one goes in next door. And they said they want to know what you want on the door. It says Norwood Police, what else you want to say? And I said, because I was a wise guy, I said I wanted to say temporary quarters since 1998. And if they get us out of here in a year like they said they would, then the joke's on me. But if we're still here in 10, that door's going to say temporary quarters since 1998. So anyway, that's a story. June 13th, 1998. Now it didn't show up because it wasn't able to. But when this flood happened in 2020, I could not please no, not water, not again. Because now, you know, I had left and gone to Wellesley and then come back, and a whole new station had been built. And they brought up the grade. This one's on a slab. There is no basement. It's flat. The retention basin's still there. I didn't think I'd ever see water like that again. When I took the right off Monroe Street onto Manhattan Street, and came to a stop because the water line was right there. And I jumped out. I did take a couple of pictures, and the newspapers used some of them. But because the ramp. The apron comes down this way, and Manhattan Street comes this way from Lenox, and pitches down this way from Pleasant Street. You've got kind of that bowl that's right in front of the station, and I couldn't get to the station. I was going to stop there first, but I just turned around and went back up on the Pleasant, went into the hospital the back way, and pitched in at the hospital that night. So anyway, that's the story. The public safety buildings at Dunn's Pond.
I think so. So I had sent some emails to people who received a grant from the town's program to help folks who were impacted by the 2020 flood, asking for stories. And Chris is going to read one of those that was sent to me. The longer one, not the beginning.
Can I tell my quick story of the flood 2020?
Yeah.
It's okay, so I don't mean to make light of the Great Flood, but it was very serious for a lot of people. We had a great day that day because we ended up with a pond in our backyard, and my daughter and I spent the rest of the day skipping stones out of the lawn. But the funny thing that caused the lake in our backyard is we live on Chapel Street. We share the rock wall with Winslow Park. And just in the worst coincidence possible, DPW had put down fresh mulch at the playground the day before. So as soon as all that water came, it lifted it all up and went right over to the storm drain and blocked it completely. And there's no blame there at all, right? Like that is just the worst coincidence ever. But I was thinking about Marguerite's like people coming together is every time we've had a downpour since then, I run into the back with my rake, like just trying to at least check on the grate, and I've run into neighbors back there doing the same thing, right? Like it's now ingrained in all of us. It's like if there's a downpour happening right now, let's go check that drain because we don't want that happening again. So, okay, Anonymous from Andrew Street. Our flood story. On June 28th, 2020, we were greatly affected by the flood in Norwood. We lived right behind Shaw's on Andrew Street. In fact, to my understanding, we were more affected than anyone else I have talked to since then. While our neighbors suffered some loss and lots of headaches, we suffered a huge mental load and years of a rebuild. Here's our story. My husband and I were down the Cape on our annual trip with friends. We were enjoying a little time away since COVID had kept us all cooped up inside for several months. With everyone tested and symptom-free, we were having a good time. 24 hours later, our neighbor sent us a video of our backyard completely flooded. Stunned, since it wasn't even raining in Wellfleet, we called her. She said she saw our cat floating on a couch in our basement. The water was so high it reached the basement window and she could see our cat in distress. Trying to rescue her, our neighbor and her son made their way into our house and asked us, "How many stairs do you have down to your basement? Because we only see 3. We had at least 12. We immediately started driving home, leaving all of our stuff at the Cape House. In tears and high anxiety the whole 2-hour drive home, we finally made it, and luckily our cat was still alive. Wow. In survival mode and in denial about our entire finished basement being completely destroyed, we turned off the power to the house and my husband waded in 5 feet of water to rescue our cat on the couch. He passed her through the small basement window to me. She freaked out, appropriately given the circumstance, and bit me and my neighbor pretty bad. I tried to pin her down, but when she bit us both, we let go and she ran up a tree in our front yard. Luckily, a very short tree. Over an hour later, in the pouring rain, she finally gave in and we rescued her on a ladder by pushing her into a crate. The whole neighborhood was watching and a little girl across the street later told us she was so scared for our cat the whole time. I was beside myself and we feel so lucky that she didn't A, drown, and B, run away. She is alive and well to this day. Ooh, I was really hoping this story was going to take Okay. It sent my neighbor to the ER, who was then on antibiotics via an IV drip for quite a while. She ended up filing a lawsuit against us, reasonably so, and our homeowner's insurance covered the damage from the bite. I also went to the ER that night for the bite, but was luckily less injured. Anyway, after the cat was rescued, we now had to deal with the horrific scenario that half of our house was completely destroyed. All of our memories were down there. Photos, memory books, yearbooks, textbooks, work materials, all paperwork, all just gone. All our major appliances and lots of furniture was down there too. Washing machine, dryer, hot water, heater, a full bathroom with a shower, fully furnished family room. Everything was ruined. I suffered a full-blown panic attack and still have PTSD from it to this day. How could this happen to us? It was just so shocking. Water must have just been pouring in. Our poor cat, our poor first home. The dust settled and the house got pumped out. The damage was so severe, I refused to look in the basement for at least a week. Family and friends came to help us clear out the mess. We paid $6,000 for a junk removal company to remove everything. Our stuff was unrecognizable. The basement was stripped down to the beams. Anything we could save, we did, but it wasn't much. Family wedding albums, destroyed. Photos from childhood, gone. Important documents, trashed. My bat mitzvah album, garbage. We spent the next year and a half completely redoing the basement. The cost was about $60,000 when all was said and done. The town of Norwood gave us a few thousand, which didn't even scratch the surface. A GoFundMe was set up for us by extraordinary people, and caring family and friends raised about $10,000. My husband worked full days and came home and laid floor down, put up drywall, and painted every single night and weekend. He built a retaining wall out of our old bulkhead to try and stop any future, quote, 100-year storms, unquote. Time passed by, the basement was refinished, and we were ready to get out of that house as soon as possible, and frankly, out of Norwood. We moved in January of 2022. We planned on raising a family in that house and staying there much longer. However, we were never going to let that happen again, and that meant saying goodbye to our first home together. We now live in a beautiful home in Hopkinton with our 4-month-old baby boy, and of course, our cat. I urged the town of Norwood to address this issue. After the storm, my husband and I drove around town during every rainstorm and cleared storm drains. We went to the Shaw's parking lot during storms, where we believed the issue was with poor drainage in the freshly paved parking lot, and just watched water spill out onto our street. Every time it rained, we had flashbacks, PTSD, and we would spend the nights checking on the basement. Time passes and distance heals, but we will certainly never forget June 28th of 2020. Nature is unpredictable, sure, but certain things can be done to help future Norwood residents not to have to go through what we went through. If we can just help one person with a letter, we will sure try. Thank you for reading our story.
I can pull those photos up. Bob, I know you said you had.
Well, yeah, after the storm of 2020, the writer does reference the grant program that Norwood put together, and myself and several other folks volunteered to, as part of that grant program, to visit some of the homes. Actually did visit a home on Andrews. I don't think it was this person's home. Anyways, Ann Haley and I, I work with Ann Haley a lot to go into homes, and to see the damage done by 2020 was really stark. There's one home that I do remember distinctly, really sad stories about people who had just, like these people had just finished redoing their basements, and to have this kind of damage done to it from a storm that was less than two hours long in length was remarkable. But I think the most one that I remember best was a home that we visited near the hospital, where the basement was a fully built out bedroom for a woman who was rooming there. So we were doing our visits probably 7 to 10 days after the storm. And we visited this home, and the pickup truck in the driveway was just piled with stuff that had been removed from the home. But we went down to the basement to kind of take the pictures so that we could submit them to the town for the grant program. We noticed as we were walking through this basement, which was a bedroom for this woman, that the rug was still there. And so we were walking, and it was soggy. And so we were really kind of worried because we took her aside and said, actually we took her aside, then we talked to the owner upstairs. This isn't a really good condition for you to be here. This is the only home we had that the rug was still intact. And here is this woman, are you still sleeping down here? Yeah. I said, well, Ann and I had to talk to her a little bit about that. This is not a safe place to be. This contributes to mold. It's not good for you to be here. And we did go upstairs to speak to the caretaker of the home. And it wasn't that he was oblivious to everything. He just didn't seem, I guess the right word would be, urgent. It didn't have the sense of urgency to get down there and rip up that rug. So we needed to get back to town, and I think we asked the building inspector what we could do so that they could get over there and see that the landlord ripped out that rug as quickly as they could. It was probably the worst situation of the probably 5 or 6 homes that we did see. But it was sad. There was an older couple on 6th Street who had a beautiful basement, brand new appliances down there. And he had done everything. He had the French drain set up. He was very proud of the work that he had done to manage Because in that neighborhood, in the Meadowbrook area, flooded all the time. And I grew up on Sunnyside, so I can remember floods flooding our basement back in the 70s. But, you know, it was really sad to see that the devastation that was done to this couple who were probably in their 80s at that point. The picture that you had, Chief, if I can just talk about the public safety building, everybody remembers June of 2020, what it did to the hospital, but that building was basically destroyed by that flood.
Yeah.
And so the hospital wasn't the first large building that suffers from the floods. 1998, and that's a picture that I know Mark Hawley and I are on the stormwater utility group, and we file a report with the selectmen, and we have a series of pictures from history, and that particular picture is in there as well. It's one of my favorites because it's, I know they had to row across to get there, but the picture of two people in a rowboat and the other three gentlemen in ankle-deep water. Always humorous to me, but I assume Bernie had to be transported over deeper water to get there. But yeah, it's, you know, the 98 storm, the other storms that we've had, and the 2020 storm, if you just think about the calculation of the costs that these storms have incurred over time, not only to the hospital, to the public safety. We had to build a new public safety building as a result of flooding. Now we're building a new hospital. But this process of visiting the homes of the grant applicants really hit homes in terms of, like, yes, these buildings were big and important, but nothing resonates emotionally more than just seeing the devastation that these folks had in 2020. And I don't know how many there were, Mark. I think there were over 100 applicants, thereabouts. And that's just a small fraction of the homes, I think, in Norwood that had a lot of significant flooding, but not enough to apply for the grant program. So hundreds of homes, and there are solutions there, and we're working towards them, but you know, that's my story. I hear the lady over here hoping that something can be done, and I think that the town is heading in the right direction to do something positive in that regard. So, thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna be quick, and I encourage everyone to go get a snack while I'm talking. I won't be offended. The biggest storm I have lived through was in northern Vermont, 1998. There was an ice storm that affected Vermont, New Hampshire, Upper New York, Maine, Quebec, Ontario. I was living in Burlington, Vermont. We got a lot of our power from Hydro-Quebec, and they still do. And all of the transmission lines coming down just snapped right over big metal ones. My family in Burlington, we didn't have power for 4 or 5 days. And that was pretty good. We had people come stay with us once we got our power back because they were still waiting. But I don't remember it that well because I was 8. And so one of the things I remember best is just how beautiful everything was. Everything was sparkling when you walked outside. So I was reading the Wikipedia article about it this morning. It was like, what happened? Like, I remember it, but as an 8-year-old, I didn't have context. And it was as much as 4 inches of ice that were on the trees and on the telephone wires. And they say that if you have a 12-inch tree that has half an inch of ice on the twigs, that's about 8 tons of weight on that tree. So the trees and the phone lines, we were just in our house and hearing them like crack and snap down. I asked my brother what he remembers. He remembers going to touch a pine cone that was covered in ice and getting yelled at by someone who was trying to fix the electrical wire that was connected to the tree that the pine cone was on. The wire was live. So my 9-year-old brother then after that knew not to not to interact with electricity. And what my mom remembers, very similar to you, Anne, is she was a public defender in Burlington, and she was one of 2 public defenders who showed up to work the first day of that ice storm. And the judge also showed up and decided that they were going to hold court, and that these 2 lawyers, who were the only people there, would be in charge of doing all of the arraignments and wouldn't be allowed to leave until they were all done. And so she was trapped by a judge in the courthouse on that first day, rather than being able to come home and cook soup over a campfire with the rest of her family. So that's my story.
So I guess it's my story. I'm a recent New England transplant, so I also have a From Beyond story. My story is from Snowmageddon, which was the big snowstorm in 2010, and I was living in Pittsburgh at the time, going to grad school. And I lived up on the top of this really big, like, cliff-top neighborhood called Fine View up in Pittsburgh. And it does have a fine view, and it's a steep, steep hill. You don't have sidewalks that get up there. There's a staircase that's about 500 steps tall, and you go up that instead. And my university was in another part of town, and my lab was on top of another really big hill that all the local physicians called Cardiac Hill. So, like, back in the day, I, like, literally was uphill both ways if I was gonna go onto campus to go to school. And also at that time, I'd been running these time point experiments, and the deal with these is that I had to be in the lab at very, very specific times to collect these cells and take measurements. And I'd been growing these cells up in a dish for about a month, and I was about a week into this 2-week-long time course experiment. And I really, really wanted to graduate. And my advisor really, really wanted me out of her lab. And we knew a big storm was coming, but I was like, well, we're gonna hope for the best. So the first day of that storm, it came in on a Friday. And I left lab early because I knew that the weather was bad, and I had my stick shift RAV4, RIP, I love that car. And I got kind of halfway up the hill, and then I started to get kind of stuck. And I was a grad student, I didn't have snow tires. Like, what are you thinking? It's Pittsburgh, it doesn't sound that much. So I tried to push it a little bit, and it kind of made a noise like an angry cat. And so I just was like, well, I'm just gonna pull over halfway up the hill and just leave my car on the side of the road. And so I marched through the snow merrily up toward my house, and I passed by someone else whose car had been making a sound like an angry cat, and they had continued to push it because their car was on fire in the middle of the road. And I looked at it, and I looked at them, and I was like, do you need any help? And they were like, I called the fire department. And I said, well, that's very good. I don't think I can do anything to help you. And I continued onward to my home. And it continued to snow merrily, merrily, merrily through the night. And when I woke up the next morning, I looked out, and just everything was covered in snow, this really big, like 3-foot deep blanket. And I couldn't see any cars, I couldn't see anything. I went to look at my alarm clock, and I couldn't see any time on that because my power was out. So that was already kind of special and exciting because I had a time point that night. And I had to get to campus. And I knew in my heart that even if they plowed some of the roads out of Fine View, there was no way my car was getting excavated, especially after all the snowplow snow was on top of my car. So, what's a guy to do? And I got my backpack, and I packed it up with ramen, because I have foresight, and I packed it up with tea bags, because I have even more foresight, and I got a yoga mat and rolled it up and stuffed it in there, because I also have that much foresight. And I got my laundry bag, which was a big square plastic type laundry bag, and I stuffed it full of cardboard to make it real flat and rigid. And then I used that to sled out of Fine View. And I got kind of down off of my little side street, and that was not very good for sledding, you know? It was like that kind of wet snow, and it's hard to kind of break a trail in it. So I tried sledding on that, it didn't work too great. I sort of trudged. Then when I got to like Federal Street, which is the big street, that was plowed a little bit, enough to let like emergency vehicles and idiot graduate students traverse it. So I sledded, I like luged down this street, and this is like a steep street. I cannot emphasize the steepness of this street enough to you people, but it was steep, and I was going really, really fast down this hill, and I thought, maybe I will die today, but it will kind of be worth it to see all of these beautiful houses all stacked on each other, and little curls of smoke off the few people who have like fireplaces, and all of the shining buildings downtown with all this snow. And yeah, so I sledded down Federal Street in the Snowmageddon to get my time point. And then I walked miles and miles to my lab, and I passed the National Guardsmen, and I passed like random Pitt and CMU professors cross-country skiing down the middle of Forbes Avenue. It was pretty cool. And then I got to my lab where I had to live for the next day and a half on ramen noodles and tea to take my time points. But I took all my time points, and I graduated, and my advisor was happy, and I was happy, and that's my story.
Okay, I grew up in Abington in a house that the cellar used to flood quite a bit. My father, the rowboat, I got a kick out of that because my father would take the boat off the side of the garage and row around the yard. So when I moved to Norwood, one of the things I kind of looked for, because I was aware of this, was watermarks in the cellar or any place else. This kind of thing, watermarks. Every single spring, I think for the first 5 or 6 years, I moved in 92, fall of 92, we had flooding in the back of Cross Street. Okay. Let's see, I got it up here. I got it upside down. Okay. We've always had flooding of some sort. But in 98, the flooding went into the cellars. Now, Norwood, I have good neighbors. Norm Conroy was alive at the time, and he was in the house over here, the far end. Number, I'll look at it this way, there. He was in this house here, so he had one of those little pumps that was flat to the ground. After he pumped his cellar out, he passed it to Jack and Louise Kornmuller in number 20. Okay, then it ended up at my house. I was fortunate in that only a quarter of the inch went in far enough to the cellar. But I think that was because we dug French drains around the bulkhead in the pouring rain up to here in the mud and everything else. And that eliminated a lot of the stuff in front of my house, so French drains are really good. But in 98, the water came pouring down Mike Flaherty's driveway into all of our backyards across street. And that's not uncommon. That's all the time that I've lived there, we have a significant rain, our 3 houses get it. When the big one happened in 2020, okay, this is the blue, the light blue, I had a river running between my elm tree and my garden. And I'm like saying, please don't take the elm tree. Please don't take the elm tree. And I just couldn't believe it. And you talk about mulch, I have this area in the back is all treed and stuff, and we've cleaned it out. It took me from 1992 to 2020 to get it all weeded out, to get it all mulched, get it all cleaned up, and it's 1,054 square feet of mulch that finally got put in there. And because of my economic circumstances, I couldn't order truckloads. It had to be when Home Depot had it on sale, we'd load up the car with 10 bags and move it around. When I called for relief, I was told, and this flood went into the garage. This went into the garage, but again, it was half inch, so I didn't lose any major stuff. Destroyed my asparagus bed, moved all the weed seeds for everybody else's yard into my yard. The choke cherries, I'm still pulling the choke cherries out. All the mulch was gone. when I call for relief, we don't do relief for vegetation. So some people didn't get anything from that flood if it was vegetation. They don't give you anything. And I'm still trying to figure out what I'm gonna do about the mulch and stuff. But it's been a chronic thing, but we've lived with it. We've lived with it. Thank God I haven't had house damage. But did you go to the Woods' house across from Hennessy?
No.
Tracy Woods? They had a similar story to this. They lost everything in the cellar, and there was a Cadillac floating in front of their house, as far as that's concerned. But the worst flood I was ever in was I had just moved myself back home to my parents from the Berkshires. I left my teaching job in the Berkshires to come back east to civilization. And I had just unpacked my life down south. My father, back at that time, there was no public sewer in the town. My father had a drain. He hadn't tightened the drain, and we had torrential and the sewer and everything through all my stuff across the summer. All my stuff. 4 years worth of lesson plans. I spent the whole summer with a blow dryer trying to salvage out on lounge chairs and everything else. There was no relief for anything like that back then. But the one miracle was I have a wastebasket that I had packed what few dishes and stuff I had in it and layered it with paper plates. That was blown clear across the room. I figured, I don't even want to open this up. Everything was intact. That was back in 1976. I still have that wastebasket. That's my good luck charm as far as that's concerned. But it was just devastating. It was just, especially since it was sewer that came in. My parents didn't lose anything. They didn't lose the heater, they didn't lose the washing machine. I lost books that were out of print because I'm an English teacher. It was just, it's a horrible experience, really horrible experience. But I count myself lucky that Norm had that pump. We were able to do that, and that the drains that I had. But I'm still pissed off about losing all that mulch.
Sure.
I mean, that was since 92 up until 20, bit by bit cleaning that all out. But the water comes in from Plimpton. It comes in from Plimpton. And what it has exasperated that area is Avalon. And all of their stuff drains in. And if everybody remembers, remember that big hollow if you cut through when the old buildings were there, the old Plimpton Press?
Oh, yeah.
Where Andrews abuts? Andrews wouldn't have had a problem if that was still open because all the water, it was like its own little retention basin. Its own little retention basin. So Avalon did not help the situation, the street.
Hopefully we'll let your fight pass. I have a story if there's any time later, but I know Jean's got something from somebody that emailed.
From home.
So if,
So you can go first.
no, go ahead. Because we're getting close to the end of the period,
Okay.
right? So we want to make sure we cover people that sent stuff. All right.
I can stand up, but I have to laugh. Everybody was talking about snow and water and 4 foot deep, and I'm like, okay, well, I didn't have much. They also say you're not supposed to shovel snow and throw it over your head. Well, when you're my height, that's what you do.
Exactly.
I will tell one funny story really quick. Because during the blizzard of '78, when you guys were having all the fun here, we were in college. And she's outside, they used to have, there was this big hill where the dining hall was. And some students would take their trays and sit on them and go down the hill. They call it tray. And I have this wonderful picture, and geez, if I'd thought about it, I would have brought it tonight, of her just like, you know, looks like the Abominable Snowman, all right, in miniature. With, you know, just snow hanging off her hat and her coat and everything like that, because she had made it through, and there were snowdrifts that were probably 3 or 4 foot tall then. But anyways, I was, go ahead. That you reminded me.
I have 2 stories that have to do with the flood. And they're not my stories, but they're stories that are maybe not as significant as losing everything in a finished basement or losing all the mulch that you spent several years preparing. But I think each story is important. And
an editorial comment is that I've done environmental work for the last 20 years or so, and every state that I've ever supported, whether it was Washington State, whether it was Pennsylvania, whether it was,
Oh, Massachusetts.
Massachusetts, and all of them had a surcharge for stormwater, and it was based on impervious area. And so I thought that was kind of normal, but I've learned since then it's not. So there may be some room for growth and improvement there too. This story is from Elizabeth E., and it says, while my daughter was in Plainville and enjoying a beautiful day, the weather turned bad here. Hail was just beginning. I live near Norwood High School. We all know how bad the rain was then because it poured into my 2-level basement. In the end, I got 2.5 feet. It came in quickly. Thank God for Norwood Electric, because I never lost my power, so my pumps kept working. This video shows how quickly the water came in. I can't show it to you, but in the meantime, I was outside the building. I was outside building up a blockage around the stairwell where it went in the basement, and it was pouring down the stair like the pictures we saw of Cottage Street in the news. In the end, it took days to get it all out. No furnace, no hot water, showering and doing laundry at friends' houses. Thank God for friends. And that's the picture.
This is Elizabeth's.
Yep. So this person was grateful for the electric company and for the friends who could help her out when she could not do the work at her home. Then the next one was Matt Moniz. He said, Ashley and I live in Norwood at Rock Street. We were victims of the flood that day on June 28th, and it will be forever etched in our memories. Still affects us today during downpours. It was traumatic, and we felt alone dealing with it. We lost everything in that basement, all mechanical items included. We've since moved to Mansfield and still have our photos from that day for insurance purposes. The state and insurance didn't really help us. So it shows, is this the right picture?
Yeah, I can pull up pictures from.
Yeah, that's okay. This shows their picnic table out back and the kids' toys and everything on the side of the property, underwater about 1 foot deep. And let's see, is there any? And then it shows a more dramatic picture of their basement and the furnace, just mostly submerged. Yeah, oof. That means the furnace is not working that good. So. And so both Elizabeth E. and Matt Moniz were able to share stories that were not as significant as the one on Andrew Street, but it was still a big impact on their families and a big impact in their basements. And we live on Rich Road, and it's fairly high in the community, but I haven't maintained my bulkhead well. And so when there's a lot of rain in a short period of time, it'll pour down the bulkhead. And even though there's a seal inside, it'll begin to come in, but it doesn't, it's not too bad. It's not impactful like in other areas. Yeah, shouldn't say that too loud. But I think
Well, there you go. There's a photo of the.
Yeah, that's the house where, that was the side of the property where the water's up to the next door and partially up the picnic table and partially submerging some of the toys, but at least it's outside, at least it's plastic toys. It's not paperwork, it's not personal memories, books, photos, things like that. So the stories that I shared, the people were affected, and actually, trying to remember, Matt, their family ended up moving to Mansfield. And the Elizabeth, they didn't move. I guess she had good neighbors. It wasn't that dramatic for her, so she didn't move. But I wonder how many people actually did, just were so affected by the whole thing that they couldn't stay. That's all I got.
I think that's everyone who signed up to speak. And we're right. Oh, I'm so sorry.
I'm going to end this with a good story from the snowstorm. At the time, my brand new acquaintance that lived on Geraldine Drive took his downhill skis and cross-country skied over to my house, and I was so impressed. I married him.
I was down the cars that were buried on the right going to her house on Chapel Street.
Perfect matching.
Super.
Well,
I think I passed it.
thank you everyone for coming tonight and sharing with us. Thanks for the hard work of all of our essential personnel who are here and the personnel who are essential to individuals. Yeah, thanks everyone.
Nice job.
This was great.
Well, thank you.
Thanks, Holly.
Good.